be muted by the call moderator or removed from the call. Additionally, if you are not a board member or the CEO and her staff, please turn off your video off. I will now read a roll call. I will now read a roll call of the committee members to identify who is present. Please identify yourself. But please identify yourself first before speaking for the record. Commissioner Andrew Coy.
Commissioner Coy, present.
Great. Commissioner Ashley Esposito. Okay. Commissioner Dylan Rooks.
Commissioner Rooks, present.
Great. And I am present. Is there a motion to open the meeting?
Motion, Rooks.
Right.
And seconded.
All righty. All in favor? Commissioner Andrew Coy.
Yes.
Commissioner Dylan Rooks.
Yes.
Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion passes. Thank you. All righty. I believe we have a compliance report this evening.
We have compliance reports as well as we have the continuous improvement presentation.
Oh, great.
Allison, just to clarify, the compliance reports are going to go first because Dr. Wu and the continuous improvement team are in another function. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Great. So are we all set to go, Jonathan?
Yes, the first compliance report is JFBB, Students in State Supervised Care, and I see that Dr. Pate has just hopped on.
So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Pate, Director of the Office of Health and Specialized Student Services. Tia Gaskew is going to hop on as well, as she'll be presenting on JFBB, Students in State Supervised Care, and a compliance report.
All right, I guess we get started now. Okay, so for JFBB, hello everybody, I'm Tia Gaskew, Foster Care Liaison. For JFBB, some of the highlights of the compliance report that we really worked hard on is collaboration and supportive structures and policy awareness and resource availability. So we've done a great job in collaborating with DSS and other stakeholders to make sure that we're fulfilling the educational and supportive services for students in state supervised care. So part of the compliance report that we've talked about in writing is that there is a summary on the school's website. We are following the COMAR 13A-0807, talking about transfer of educational records of children in state supervised care. We're notifying the families of the children in state supervised care and also working with the foster parent and working very closely with Department of Social Services. We have ensured the district employees are also aware of this new compliance report. Dr. Pate, did you have anything to add for JFE?
For JFE, no, I would just lead us into the questions, the thought-provoking questions.
So some of the questions that we have come up with, because we really wanted to make sure that we include all of our stakeholders in this compliance report, and also just how we support families in state supervised care. Do you think there are additional steps that we can take as a district to inform families of their rights and help them address any challenges they may have, in particular with digital resources or navigating enrollment process?
Is that a question towards us as commissioners?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought that was a question posed to the families. Got it. Got it. Can you repeat the question so we make sure that we own it for
Sure. Sure. Do you think there are any additional steps that the organization can take to ensure that families and caregivers are fully informed, and if they're facing any challenges with digital resources or navigating the enrollment process? Is there anything additional you think we should work on to make sure families are supported through that process?
Commissioner Coy?
Yeah, I'm certainly happy to sort of reflect on, admittedly with limited knowledge specific to the space, but as I looked and read through the compliance report, I mean, I certainly feel like there's, some positions that have been hired. And one of my questions on that is like, is the volume and the complexity of some of the coordination that is needed here adequately met by the existing staffing structure? So it references that there was a position hired for, along these lines. But I guess one question I have is, was there a prior liaison to the 22-23 school year? And is there only a single liaison between some of City Schools office and some of the foster care Department of Social Services or other agencies? Just help me understand, because I could only imagine that a single person would be inadequate. And so to your point of like, is the services that we're providing to help individuals and families navigating this adequate? I would say likely not. But if you could tell me a little bit more about the size of the office and some of those things, that would be helpful.
Sure.
So Tia is a team of one. The 22-23 school year was the first year of her position being created.
So that was you. That was you that was hired. Well,
that is Tia. Tia's the party of one. She has on average about a caseload of 350 students throughout the school year, and relies heavily on DSS to help her navigate connecting with those families, because again, she is a party of one.
And maybe on that, well, okay, go for it. Sorry. Mm-hmm.
No, go ahead. I'm following you. I'm in agreement. Like a party of one is a lot. The caseload, that's a lot.
I know from a student counseling perspective, some of the national recommendations are more in the vicinity of 250 or 225. I forget the exact number. And obviously, being a school counselor is a different nature than this support. And I can only imagine that this support is greater. And to the points that are raised in the compliance report, the level of coordination, the continuity of data, like these things are non-trivial. And there's just, I can't imagine how difficult some of these pieces are just to keep track of, as there are frequent changes, I imagine. And so I don't know if there's a national standard. And Commissioner Slater-Harrington, I imagine your background expertise is much more attuned to this, but how would we, I guess, compare against others is in this realm to know what would be more appropriate sized?
So I'll say when we did our evaluation with the Department of Ed, they were super impressed with us just having TIA, because most districts don't have a TIA. So the work is put back on school-based staff, like the social workers and folks on the ground at the schools. So we are unique in the sense that we have TIA, but in other districts, they also have like people personnel workers. So it's kind of apples and oranges.
Sure. I wanted to ask, as a related, how are you working with school social workers and community school coordinators to try and make sure that our most vulnerable students are getting adequate care?
So lots of hands-on. So I conduct school visits. I have check-ins. I also do training with school-based staff, which include those community school coordinators, also the IEP chairs, because some of our foster care kiddos have an IEP or 504. So very closely working with schools, lots of school visits, lots of collaborative meetings with DHS, DSS, and school-based team, and they're also included in those meetings. So it's really like an all hands on deck approach when we're talking about students in state supervised care. And that's how we support each other in the work.
Commissioner Brooks, do you have any questions? I'm sad, Commissioner. I'm missing Commissioner Esposito on this. She is normally our SME on this topic. But I wanted to also, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit distracted. I wanted to also know from your standpoint of the 300, how they're performing, and are there trends in terms of what supports are needed that the board should be aware of?
So we use a multi-tiered approach. So normally it's tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. So tier 1 is those kiddos that come to school every day and they have exactly what they need. Their grades are good. Tier 2 are those kids that may have a few absences. Their grades are still good, but they may have some challenges with maybe some academic performance or getting to school, and we work to try to remove those barriers. And tier 3 is for those students that may be experiencing chronic absenteeism. Their foster placement may not be working out for them, so they have to move. So we work closely with the school-based staff and other resources to make sure those children receive all of the services under all 3 tiers. But tier 3 is the one we really work really closely when they haven't been to school, or they're not passing their classes, or they're experiencing some challenges with housing. And we work closely with the staff at the school and also DSS staff to make sure that we're supporting the students on the educational journey.
And of the 300, can you give us a breakout of how many would be in that tier 3?
For the last data that I had, we had about 50 in tier 3. And some of those were high school kiddos. So we worked really closely with making sure that they had what they need. Some of those kids also lived in group homes. So it was important to know who the group homes were, and who was managing those students while they were at the group home, and working very closely with DSS if we hadn't seen kids in a few days or something came up and it was really urgent. So in those instances, definitely close work with the school social worker, the school community coordinator, and even the school leader at times to make sure that they're supported.
Okay. I'm pretty confident I'm gonna have some follow-up questions offline.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you for that. Commissioner Coy, did you have any further questions on this compliance report?
Yeah, not here for this context, but I feel exactly what you said, which is Commissioner Esposito, I'm sure, has I imagine engaged previously, but certainly missing some of the insight here now as to additional questions. But thank you for the compliance report and the work that's underneath all of it, day in and day out.
Thank you.
All right, I think we have another compliance report on homeless students who were experiencing homelessness.
Yes, we do. So JFE comes out of the Office of Health and Specialized Student Services as well. Dr. Adrienne Cisse and her team, we call them the MVP team now, leads this work. So I just like the plug, like that's one of the highlights. They are now the McKinney Dental Program team. We had to change their name based on a survey or a visit we had from the state, who said we should not use the word homeless services anymore. So now we are the McKinney Dental Program officially. So the purpose of this compliance report is that it needs to outline the trend data on the number of homeless students attending city schools, confirmation of school staff training, lists the school-based homeless liaisons, chronic absenteeism by grade band. It also includes suspensions by grade band, the number of homeless students receiving food and nutrition and or transportation services from city schools, the average daily per student cost of transporting homeless students. The report shall include costs beyond the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act grant funding. And this report will also include readily available and pertinent assessment data to address performance of students identified as homeless and services provided to those students under Title I. So most of the work we do in our office around the McKinney-Vento program is funded by McKinney-Vento funds from the state, as well as Title I grant funds. We also had some ARP funds that sunset this year. And having that influx of funds, some of the improvements we were able to make is we now have a closed closet that is at our office, so schools can readily on demand reach out to us, and we can get uniforms to students as well as sweatsuits, underclothes, underwear directly to families, or we even have families come and visit us when they can to come and get what it is that they need. In addition to uniforms, we also now provide laundry detergent and laundry cards, because I was like, we're giving out all these clothes, like how are people washing them? And we were like, oh, okay, they're not. So now we have opportunities to assist these families in washing their clothes. We do a case management approach around this. We have 6 homeless liaisons on our team, each have like 1.5 CLNs that they work with, because they have the responsibility to do a best interest determination meeting once a child identifies as homeless, to determine if their school of origin is the best place for them to be, or if they need to transfer to another school. We believe that having this process in place has helped in the improvement in attendance for our homeless kiddos, because we are able to identify if it makes sense to stay where they were, or help that family, handhold that family, and transition them to where it's best for them to be. We've also been able to decrease the cost of transportation for the district and transporting homeless students. And that's just based on that same approach of having a family identify if this is the same place you're going to be for the coming future. Does it make sense for us to put your baby on a bus at 6 o'clock to take them across town? Most families agree with us that that doesn't make sense, but they don't know how to fix it. So having someone walk them through that process and work with ECT and help them to get their baby somewhere where it makes more sense has been helpful. So I will pause if you guys have questions. If not, I can move to the questions that we prepared.
I don't necessarily have a question at this point, but I do want to just note the sensitivity around language. I love that you changed the name of the team, but I think also I would be sensitive in calling them homeless students rather than students experiencing homeless. I just think words are important, and would encourage some sensitivity around that. You had Commissioner Coy or Commissioner Brooks, any questions at this point?
I had one reflection, and I guess there's a question related to it. Just seeing the numbers increasing from year over year, and sort of the size and scale of this, as well as looking at the table a little bit lower than where you had made through the compliance report so far, but showing what grade bands the students that are experiencing homelessness are in. It's, the number and the percentage that are elementary students, and just that, just imagining some of that day in and day out experience of just the challenges that are faced there, and the scale and scope of this work. In terms of my question is, in terms of the increase, was that anticipated? Are there other factors, or what do you anticipate there's not a clear trend line, I guess, here, but curious, what do you think accounts for some of that, and what are you anticipating in the upcoming year to be the number of students experiencing homelessness?
So we attribute the growth to education. So homeless has such a negative connotation. So it's been a lot of wordsmithing around getting people to understand that if you fall in these categories under McKinney-Vento, you do qualify for homeless services as if you are unhoused. So we've done a lot of work with helping schools help families identify, like if they're doubled up at night, if their parent does not have the lease to the place where they stay, then technically they qualify for homeless services. So having those conversations and educating people on what the McKinney-Vento definition of homelessness is could be the main attributing factor to more families being identified and being able to access more resources.
Yeah, and in that, I guess that sort of leads to the question of how many families do you feel, or might you imagine, are currently experiencing on that gradation, right? The housing insecurity to included in that are not currently being counted. To what degree do we think we're undercounting the actual need and experiences of our students?
I would not say that we're low. Like I would say like the over 3,000 families we serve probably is higher. It's probably double what it is that we actually are serving and have identified. I just think with more education and getting more families and changing like some questions, like we changed some questions on the enrollment forms and address verification forms that will also help us to more readily identify people who are experiencing housing insecurities.
I have a question. So I'm looking at the numbers, 40% at Highland which is pretty high, for particularly for a school that is like bursting, like there, it's highly populated. And at Coleman, 23%. So anything where your populations are that high, 18 to 40%, how are we wrapping around those schools in terms of whether it be through community schools? Are those students being encouraged to, you know, engage in after school programming and break programming? Or is there intentionality with regard to targeting them so that, you know, if they're unhoused, that the time that they're spending wherever they're out of school is lessened? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I got you. So I would attribute our identification of our multilingual families who are experiencing homelessness. Those numbers have increased drastically because we have Spanish speaking staff on our team. And Carlos is very adamant about making sure that that community understands the services that they're eligible for. So the addition of him to the team is the year we saw a great increase in those ELL families actually identifying and accessing services. Each MVP liaison, they do the same thing Tia do as a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 model. So every quarter they have to look at the grades and attendance of all their students and connect them to things like tutoring, whether it's school-based tutoring or finding other resources to help them. We work out plans with transportation to make sure that they are able to participate. For all children who are in shelter, they are eligible to go to a summer camp at St. Vincent de Paul every year that they put on for them. So we try to find resources where we can remove some of the stigma and give them the opportunity to be with other students who may be having shared experiences with them.
Is there intentional targeting? Am I like in terms of, okay. And do you know the percent of those young people who might be engaged in out of school time programming, or for the older students who may be in youth works? Do we have a line of sight into that?
We do have a method of identifying the youth work students who identify as homeless because we have some special opportunities for them with working with the Y Central Maryland. So I could get Adrian to pull that data for you.
And I guess I have a curiosity about how our students who are experiencing homelessness are showing up in our behavioral data, any health data. I have a narrative in my head about what that probably looks like, but I would like to see how it bears out in the numbers.
I could get that specific data pull for you as well.
Thank you. As an assignment. So I guess I should articulate it in the right words. As an assignment, can you please follow up with how both our students who are experiencing homelessness and our students who are also in state supervised care show up in our any behavioral data that we might have and our health data, their access to health. I think that would give us insight on what their experiences are, where we, if there are gaps, where we need advocacy or how we need to align with our partners better.
I would say on the health front, the best data we probably have is our immunization compliance data. Outside of that, we would have to go school to every health suite and identify that way. We don't have like a database of chronic health condition data as a district.
I just, even in aggregate, having some, and no, I don't want any disaggregated, but in aggregate, just to give us a full picture.
No problem.
All right, I'm taking up a lot of airspace. Commissioner Coy, do you have anything else?
Yeah, one question that I have, I appreciate in the report that it does show by school to kind of pull out those schools that are that have more students who are experiencing homelessness called out. And I guess my question that I didn't see as clearly described is, are these schools receiving additional extra coordination support? Is there any indication, are some students, as you referenced, might be sort of supported in changing schools? Are these schools that students who are experiencing homelessness might be sort of encouraged to attend? What explains some of the numbers, and are they then these schools receiving additional supports because of the clear and what I would imagine be additional benefits or needs for support?
Yep. So some of it is around placement of shelters as well as group homes, like what communities those are in. We see in those areas, of course, we're going to get more kids who need services. I would say their MVP liaison is probably more hands-on with that school and making sure that those needs are addressed. But we also, the same way Tia do, rely on a community school coordinator as well as the social worker to help us, help them, help us, help them.
Yeah, well, and one sort of thought, I know you referenced earlier that it's about one MVP liaison or coordinator for every 1.5 CLNs.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I wonder if you were to look at the number of students experiencing homelessness by CLNs, if that would sort of even out, or if it might make more sense to sort of group them slightly. I don't know if that's just the average that exists, or if that's how they are assigned. I guess in what you had said earlier.
So the feedback we got from the state is, for the way that we operate our program, we should have about 16 MVP liaisons, which would require funding from somewhere for us to grow from 6 to 16. So we're just doing the best we can with the manpower that we have.
Yeah, but that's helpful insight to have right there about, that relates also to the earlier question as to what would be an appropriate number of staff vis-a-vis the number of students experiencing either homelessness in this case or the previous report. And so I do I would be interested, as we are going through budget season already, right? We're already sort of entering budget season, how the needs here are balanced with so many other needs that do exist, but especially with concentration of poverty and with the shift to more school-based dollars through the blueprint, how this need is then met in a thoughtful way, as thoroughly as possible given the resources. So that's not a specific assigned sort of task, but is certainly something that I will, you can anticipate I would likely ask again as we go through the budget process. So please think about how you would respond to that, in I guess May at this point, when we'll likely be seeing the budget come back from you all.
If I could go back to the previous compliance report to add on to that assignment, as you tell us how many are in each tier, if you can also give us an idea of academic performance. I'm not sure how to frame it so that it's just in aggregate how they're doing. How are you looking at how they're doing and how we're doing interventions, how we're layering intentionally interventions for these vulnerable populations?
Okay.
Excuse me, I can speak to that. One of the ways that we do that, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Cisse. I'm the coordinator of health. I work with Dr. Pate, the amazing Dr. Pate. One of the ways we do that is that we do a MTSS tier support. And the MVP liaisons actually take that, we have enrollment data, and we look at attendance, we look at behavior, we also look at academic performance. And based on that information, that's how they're able to make decisions on where they focus their attention to, simply because we do have a significant amount of students who are identified as homeless in Baltimore City schools. So with that in mind, that's how they facilitate their days. And what that also looks like is, what do we need to do to help schools better support that and or initiate additional wraparound supports for students, be it SST, 504s. We partner also with the attendance office to look at the attendance and see what that impact is and what are those specific barriers that may be keeping students from school, and how can we provide that early intervention support and or resources to help those students. And so that's one of the ways that we're able to kind of work with the things that we have, is by doing facilitating that particular framework. Now, again, we are limited because of the number of staffing that we had, but also we have been given high praise from MSDE on the way that we are able to manage that bucket of work because of that process that we put in place.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And I'll look for the other data with regard to students in state supervised care as well. I'm going to move us along because we're a bit beyond our agenda timing. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to forget names. Ms. Gask, Tia Gask, Courtney Pate, and Dr. Cisse. Thank you all for your participation in the compliance report. I'm going to move us along to continuous improvement, and I believe Dr. Wu will be leading that presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Great. Good afternoon, commissioners. We are here today to do an update on continuous improvement, joined by Amy Winchester and Zach Jaffe. Amy and I are actually at the CGCS conference. We actually just did a presentation on this exact topic around attendance here at CGCS, and shared with lots of other districts around the country about this work that we're doing at city schools. So we had some great participation and great questions from folks. So we're just going to build on that momentum on this in this presentation. So so Zach, if you can go to the next slide. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on some of these overview slides because we actually presented to Safety and Wholeness back in June about continuous improvement. So these are the same slides. Just a reminder about the structured approach of CI that we've used in the city schools now for a few years to really tackle really complex problems. And so what that has looked like is on the next slide, the two kind of components to how we approach continuous improvement at city schools, which is really strategy component on the left-hand side, where we really take a problem or a challenge that we have, and we really think through what are the root causes, what is our goal, what are we trying to solve for, and then making sure that we're thinking through how we're going to measure whether something we're doing is actually bringing about a change that is an improvement, and then thinking through what those strategies are that we want to implement to get to that goal. And so once we do that strategy component, we really move then to the doing component, which is really, really critical to continuous improvement, right? Which is what we use as city schools is the Plan, Do, Study, Act, or PDSA cycle, where we're really having people test whether a change idea, something that they're doing, is actually effective or not. And I probably a broken record because I probably said this in June, which is that we're often very good at the plan and do part of the PDSA cycle and very not good at the study and the act part, right? Where we might look at what we've done, but then this piece around acting on it, meaning we look at what we've done, determine whether or not it's effective, and then make adjustments, right, based on what we learn in order to do another cycle. And I think the other piece of the PDSA cycle that's important is that it's something that is on a short cycle, right? The PDSA cycle is not an all year endeavor, right? It is, we try to do them on a couple week basis, maybe 6 weeks or at most 2 months, because the idea is that you want to study something and determine whether or not it's working and make adjustments. And you've got to do that on a faster cycle. You can't wait until the whole school year has gone by to make an adjustment. And so that's really a critical part of our CI framework and how we've been implementing the CI mindset in the different bodies of work that we do. And so the CI office, just to give some context, really provides strategic support and consulting capacity building to both central office teams as well as to schools. And we're going to talk about attendance in particular in a second, which really has been about supporting schools, right? And this is supporting school leaders as well as supporting attendance leads at schools and attendance teams at schools. And so our job is to support the work that is already happening. We don't direct them. We just provide the supports they need in order to think about things from a continuous improvement mindset, help them with data, help them with thinking through what measures they might want to use to understand if something is working. And so that is really our role in the CI office. We've refined a little bit our CI strategy and kind of codified it a little bit. So this is a new slide that has not been seen by the Safety and Wholeness Committee before, because we've learned a lot over the last few years around how we implement the CI strategy in the different bodies of work that we do. And so we've really found that all 4 of these strategic components of scaling continuous improvement are really critical for it to be successful. And so I'll start on the bottom right 2 corners, which is really about building organizational infrastructure to sustain continuous improvement, right? And what that means is we have to make sure there are systems and routines to sustain that mindset, right? Whether it's the PDSA cycle or making sure people are thinking through all those components and strategy, right? You actually have to routinize that, have people practice it and do that, and have a framework for that people can understand in order for CI to be scaled or for CI to continue to build and live and how people do their work. The other really critical piece that we found as we've done this work over the last few years is that data for improvement is really important. And I want to make the distinction between data for improvement and data for accountability or outcome data, right? Because what we need for continuous improvement is not outcome data, right? It is not like, what is the MCAP score at the end of the year? Because what you need in continuous improvement is to understand what those measures are along the way that help you see whether or not something you're doing is working. And that data is very different from the outcome data. And I would say that this data for improvement piece is actually something we're not great at. And so that is something that the CI team has really tried to dig into and support folks on, and thinking through what are those data pieces that we really need to be focused on to understand whether or not something we're doing is working or not. And so that's really critical. And that's kind of an infrastructure piece, right, that we have to make sure that we're building in and continuing as we build out CI. The top two on the left, the blue corners of this square, are really about building skills for folks and shifting their mindsets around understanding continuous improvement and then implementing it. And so we found that first, we provide a lot of professional learning to folks around continuous improvement, understanding what it means, understanding what it means to implement it and how to implement it. You know, a lot of times folks believe they are doing continuous improvement, but then once we start digging into what it actually looks like in practice, a lot of folks sometimes realize, well, I wasn't doing all the pieces, right, of continuous improvement. And so that leads to this last piece, which is really practicing it. This application piece is really critical. And that's where a lot of folks really realize, oh, I thought I was doing continuous improvement, but I wasn't doing this last piece, right, the adjustment piece, or I wasn't really spending enough time reflecting on my data to understand you know, what adjustments I need to make. And so we found that all four of these components are really critical to continuing to scale CI across different bodies of work in the system. Zach, if you can go to the next slide. And so what you see here are some of the key areas that the continuous improvement team has really focused on this year. It will be focused on this year and has in the past as well. And if I start on the left-hand side, we have done or started doing some work and continued work in secondary writing. We've been involved in the 9th grade on track to graduate work, and have a new fellowship around grades 3 through 5 math fluency. And we actually have a presentation coming up in teaching and learning that will talk about those things in a future meeting, because those are more teaching and learning focused. The one we're going to talk about today is this one in the middle on attendance. But I just also want to mention on the right-hand side here, we also work a lot with district offices, right? If they might have a particular challenge they're trying to address, and we work with them, like listed on here, ECT, they had questions about transfer process. We help them process map that, think through how to make that process better for students and families. So that's one example of an improvement project we've worked on with different district offices. We also do work with the cabinet and the leadership team around indicators and progress monitoring around those key priorities. And then, as I mentioned earlier, you know, we do professional development for district teams around continuous improvement, that professional learning piece, understanding the concepts and the theories and how to then implement it in the work they do. We are continuing to build that out and providing that PD for district teams as well. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Zach, and he's going to talk specifically about the attendance PDSA cycles in schools.
Thank you, Dr. Wu. Thank you, commissioners. Again, this is something we talked about at a committee meeting last year, and we wanted to give you an update now that we've had the summer to kind of process how things ended up, and just share with you what's going on, and then some things that we are working on for this school year. Just a reminder here, like we have a very simple goal, which is to increase the number of students who are regularly attending school. Fits also right in with the strategic goal for the district around decreasing chronic absenteeism as well. And as always, for the CI office, our goal is to make sure that this happens every day for every student. What we did last year was we engaged schools in understanding what the PDSA tool was and how their attendance teams could use it to focus on improving daily attendance and reducing that chronic absenteeism. As Dr. Wu talked about, like that involves like putting this process into place, reinforcing the habits of, hey, when we get together as an attendance team, we are going to have a specific goal. We're going to look at specific data to see if that goal is being achieved. And we're going to make sure that we spend some time analyzing not only are we on the way toward achieving that goal, but what adjustments can we make in order to get better results. Our attendance office provided us with some statistics right here based on the end of the year results. Our average daily attendance for the district was up 1.8% from the previous year, and chronic absenteeism was down 5.4 points from the previous year, which means if you think about it, not just as numbers, but individual students, over 30,000 students were attending school more regularly this year. In school year 23-24, and over 4,000 fewer students were chronically absent compared to the year before. One of the things we analyzed is like the results that schools were getting, school by school, how does that happen to correlate with the schools who are really participating in these PDSA cycles around attendance? We can see the numbers on the left-hand side right here, looking at all of our traditional schools. 2/3 of them completed at least one PDSA cycle and achieved some sort of year-over-year growth. Majority of our schools completed 2 or more if they achieved the year-over-year growth. And we can see that the highest level, if the 7 PDSA cycles were what we fit into last year's school schedule, we had 15 schools who did 5 to 7 of those cycles. And if you look at the chart on the right-hand side, you can see that there seems to be some correlation with the amount of PDSA cycles that these schools did and their increase in year-over-year attendance. The schools that did 5 to 7 cycles got the greatest growth in year-over-year attendance. We don't want to say that the PDSA cycles cause schools to achieve this growth because we don't think that's true. But what we would say is that there seems to be like schools that have good processes in place, teams in place, and are given this structure to focus their conversations on specific improvement ideas and also to do those adjustments. They seem to correlate with getting better results.
Zach, I'm going to jump in really quick before you go to the next slide, because I just want to mention that when we rolled out these PDSA cycles with schools, we did not do it as a compliance exercise. This was not a, check the box, you got to do this. We're going to be tracking who completed their PDSA cycle around attendance. It was really a tool that we rolled out and we provided support on for schools who wanted to do it, right? And in all honesty, when we did it, it was a risk in the sense, maybe not a risk, but it was something that we did because I think our belief is that, we wanted to see, right, whether or not doing these PDSA cycles might have some sort of correlation or impact on attendance at schools, right? And so if this data had shown that, schools that did more cycles didn't actually have better year-over-year attendance, then it would be our job as the CI team to continuously improve and go back and look at, well, what are we doing that's actually not helping, right, to improve attendance? So we do our own PDSA cycles within the CI team to make sure we're continually improving as well. I think what this data bears out is, given there looks like there's some correlation, right, between schools who did more cycles, right? We hope that there is some piece of what we're doing in the PDSA cycles that's actually helping schools. And we hope that this is a proof point for schools and principals and attendance teams of schools to see this data and say, hey, maybe if I wanted to improve my attendance more, maybe there's something in there, right, about doing those PDSA cycles that can help my school improve its attendance even more. And so we want the proof to kind of be in the pudding, right? Like, we're giving you evidence that this might help you. And that evidence is what we want people to make a decision using in order to determine whether or not they want to do these cycles, because we do think, based on this, that it could be helpful for them in improving the attendance at their school even more than it's improved from last year to this year.
First, do no harm, right? And I think this shows that, by asking schools to do this extra process, it didn't hurt, that's for sure. Just to sum up some learnings from last year's PDSA cycles, the schools that we talked to and that gave us insight into how it went for them felt that the PDSA cycles and those 4 critical levers really helped to improve their attendance. These levers are, one is having consistency and implementing their attendance strategies. And sometimes that starts with just having your team meet regularly, reporting to us that, hey, we held those weekly attendance meetings sacred in our schedule was the first step in making a big difference with that consistency. Another reporting that I found was a key lever was leveraging the outreach strategies like home visits. And it's not so much that the home visits automatically make students start coming to school, but they help the school establish relationships and to identify the barriers that are keeping students and families from participating in school as much as we would like. So it kind of leads to other strategies, such as bullet point 3 right here, using those community partnerships. A lot of schools were telling us that their community school coordinator was a key part of their attendance efforts to provide those supports once those barriers have been identified for each family. Finally, another lever that a lot of schools identified was working to resolve transportation issues, such as MTA bus schedules, walking issues, school buses, and they had insight into that data once they started looking at it regularly through the PDSA cycle. They also told us that the PDSA cycles were most helpful for them when they were working on strategies that they had already been using around attendance, or that had been suggested to them by the attendance office here. It wasn't that they necessarily needed a lot of new tools. It was that they needed a mechanism for understanding whether what they were doing was actually working. And as Dr. Wu mentioned, to make those regular tweaks when they saw things that could be improved. It's providing that discipline that when they were looking at data every 2 to 3 weeks and interrogating what, if any, impact they were having, and if they weren't, what barriers were there. That's what kind of led to the improvements that they identified. So with that, let me turn it over to Amy, who's going to talk about what we are working on for this school year.
Thanks, Zach. So on the next slide, we laid out a little bit of what we learned as a CI team and how we pivoted. So in the same way that we're facilitating PDSA cycles with schools, we are also engaging in them ourselves to think about how we can better support the district in building these routines and also these mindsets around improvement. And so last year, we really focused on building the principal and assistant principal's capacity because we recognize that they're critical in the success of any attendance initiatives that are occurring in schools. And so we worked with them, we trained them in what a PDSA cycle was and how to utilize it. And we quickly learned that what they were doing was going back to their schools, and then they were bringing in their coalition of leaders that were supporting them or even driving their attendance work in their schools. And so as a result of that, this year, we were able to partner with the attendance team in the district office and facilitate that same training with the attendance leads across the district. And as a result of that, we've seen more schools engage in the process. And that's in service to the fact that the people who are on the ground doing it are the ones who have the knowledge to be able to do it in this way. Another learning is that we recognize that PDSA cycles are most impactful when they're aligned to school goals and overall attendance strategies. One of the key feedbacks we got from principals last year was that they had all these different plans and how do they all align? And so this year, as we were thinking about that and really trying to make this feel integrated into what they were already doing, we again worked with the attendance team to iterate on our PDSA cycle Google Sheet. And so we aligned it to their 6 key strategies that they push out to schools, but we also aligned it to their attendance plans that they produce. And so that as they're doing PDSA cycles, it's directly connected to wanting to learn more deeply about something that's already there. And so for this year, we're continuing with 3-week cycles across the school year. So in every quarter, we have 2 of them. And then we are also participating, our team, in attending the weekly attendance lead office hours so that we can support the district attendance team and also attendance leads as questions arise. And we're also supporting the district attendance team in consolidating all this learning because every PDSA cycle is generating a lot of really valuable learning about what's working, what isn't working, and how these strategies, the best practices of these strategies and how you operationalize that. And so that's another piece that our team is supporting the district attendance team in doing as well. And so we want to give a little bit of an example of what this has actually looked like. And we want to connect it from last year and this year because again, PDSA cycles are intended to be generative of learning. And oftentimes you have to do many of them before you get to kind of the big picture learning that you ultimately want to scale across your system, or in this case, a school. And so this is one school in particular. And last year, they implemented their very first PDSA, the change of home visits. They wanted to learn more deeply about how these were impacting their average daily attendance. And so in that first cycle, they learned that home visits, like Zach had mentioned earlier, doesn't really have a big impact on average daily attendance. But what they did find is that it was building those relationships with families and that sense of belonging and families understanding what attendance is and why it's important. And so as they were building on that learning, they decided that they wanted to keep keep doing home visits and they still had to continue to build those relationships because those are critical as well. But then they added in this second change, then kind of started doing them simultaneously. And they tested this 90% club to motivate students. And so over the course of the year, they were testing these change ideas together to understand what they were seeing in terms of impact with average daily attendance. And they found that when doing both of these together, they did see an increase in the attendance of students who were engaging in these two interventions. And so on the next slide, it comes to this year and the very first cycle that we just finished about 2 weeks ago of this exact same school. And so you can see up at the top where it says attendance strategy to improve. In addition to that 90% club, which they know is showing signals of improving attendance, they're now adding a third component, and that is their mentor system, or what they call SICO. And essentially what they want to do is now see the impact of, if we do this 90% club and we do this mentorship program, then we believe that that is going to lead to even more improved attendance for our students. And so they did that and they tested. And when they came back to reflect on the data, which they were collecting 2 measures for this cycle. The first one was the frequency of the afternoon announcements, because the 90% club was really about when students are coming 90% of the time or more, then they get announced, they get shout out in the morning, they get shout out in the afternoon. And for their students, this is an elementary school, that was a really big incentive for them to come to school. They like to hear their name. And in addition to that, they have this mentoring. So they wanted to look at, could I even get that to happen? Is it happening regularly? And then their impact measure was looking at their average daily attendance of those students to see the impact. And so after they did that, they brought this data back to their attendance team and they started to reflect on what exactly did they see. And so they confirmed for them this cycle that the 90% club, it works. They have a structure, they're doing it reliably, and it really does support students and incentivizing students to come to school. And they also recognize that, like, they waited till after Labor Day because they understood that there was something else going on there. And so they really wanted to be disciplined in that test so that they could see impact. But they recognized that this implementation of their mentorship program was a lot harder, and that there were a lot of things that they hadn't considered in rolling it out for the first time. And so based on those reflections and what they were trying to do in this particular cycle, they acknowledge that we don't need to test the 90% club anymore. It's happening reliably. It's having the impact we want it to. We've learned what we can, and now we're going to just scale it, and it's going to become a part of our school. But we really do now need to dig into this mentorship program, because this is the piece that we believe is going to improve attendance that much more on top of what the 90% club had already done. And so you see that they adopted that one piece and then decided that for their next cycle, what they were going to do was really double down on that mentor. And this again is showing that iterative learning that they're doing quickly that then leads to the improved outcomes that they're seeing in their attendance and chronic absenteeism across the school. Another thing that we're doing that has come out of the learning that we did last year with schools is that we have a lot of insights around our schools. Our principals are telling us, our attendance leads, that there are a lot of persistent reasons why students don't come to school. And so what we want to do now as an improvement team alongside our attendance team and the district as a whole is really do some root cause analysis on understanding and identifying those persistent barriers that students are facing. We want to actually go in the field and we want to talk to schools and we want to hear from parents so that we can better understand the nuance of what these barriers are and how they impact them. Because ultimately what we want to do, our goal here, is to identify those critical levers that we can as a system impact and improve and support schools better to address with families. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Dr. Wu.
So that's our presentation. In terms of just questions to pose back as a part of the engagement part of this, we wanted to ask if you all had any thoughts or insights about kind of our approach to scaling continuous improvement, any suggestions you might have around that or changes, as well as if you had ideas about other areas that you really think would benefit from a CI approach that we could kind of dig into. So would love thoughts and feedback on that.
Well, Dr. Wu, thank you so much to you and your team for this wonderful presentation. it is among the work that I am most excited about and proud that the district is taking on. Um, we are a learning organization, and if we are not doing continuous improvement, we're not learning. And so several highlights of the presentation today was just the recognition of, we got part of the plan, do, act, study, part of that down, and that we're continuously improving on the other parts, just the recognition and the introspection that your team is doing from a process standpoint, to see how can we even continuously improve on the continuous improvement. So I'm thrilled about that. I liked the alignment of the initiatives that you're working on this year with the board goals. I can see clear alignment there of, because that's how we're going to realize those goals, if we have a recognition of what we're doing and where we need to improve and close some gaps. So I love that. With regard to the attendance, particularly around the attendance work that we just saw, I noted that with the 90% club, that there was this cycle of let's see what we're doing and how we're doing before we expand it. So often, not just the district, but I've seen it in other sectors as well, as we expand before we really have done the deep thought and deep work around, was it really effective? Did it scratch the itch that we were looking to? So I wanted to just give a moment and acknowledge the team for that work and those high points. Commissioner Coy, do you have any questions or anything that you'd like to share?
I'll plus one what you said, Commissioner Slater-Harrington, on just the admiration for the deep work that's going on here. In terms of your question, Dr. Wu, about are there other areas that we would be interested in, I for myself would, while this is outside the scope of this committee, certainly feel that continuous improvement questions and work, and this might be contained within the district office sort of bucket that you outlined there, around human capital. There are, processes of teacher certification recognition, or some of the hiring processes, and just knowing the size and scale of human capital in the district, right? As a learning organization, we rely so heavily on the humans in that loop, in that equation. I do think, to the extent that it's not already part of that bucket, I would love to see it part of that. To the extent that it is, I certainly would be happy to spend some time learning more about what questions are being asked there and what are some of the processes. But that does feel like a particular area of beneficial attention.
Yeah, thank you for that idea and suggestion. We actually haven't done a lot of work with human capital, and I think that's certainly an area that we could dig into, even if it's in a small, kind of very particular area kind of way. So we will definitely think about that. And the other thing, Commissioner Slater-Harrington, I was thinking about when you were speaking just now is one of the great things about the PDSA cycle is that we've heard from teachers and schools that it actually, because it's such a short cycle, it actually gives folks, I don't know, for lack of a better way to put it, permission to fail on something, which is not something that I think we do very well in education, right? And so for a school to say, I remember one high school last year tried to do like this they were trying to incentivize attendance for seniors, and they tried this like breakfast thing they wanted to host for seniors, and they tried it one time and it was like, oh, that did not work at all. We were only getting the kids who were already coming, like who, it didn't improve attendance for other students who they were trying to actually bring in. So they scrapped it, right? And they invested their resources and in something else, right? And so that's part of the beauty of the PDSA cycle, is it allows people to actually, it's okay to like fail. And we heard teachers and the teacher fellowships, not a part of this attendance work, but in other parts, other projects where we've done continuous improvement, where teachers have said, it's the first time where I felt like it's okay to say that something didn't work, right? And like, to your point, like in order to improve, sometimes some things don't work. You actually have to learn things that don't work also, and you have to be able to abandon them, right? And like the PDSA cycle and continuous improvement gives folks the space to be able to do that. And we found that to be a really important part of our work as well.
I listen, you know how excited I am about this. I could talk about it for forever. It typifies what we should be doing. And just like the new grading policy allows students to remaster, this is the same thing. Not everything has to be high stakes. Some things do. We've got a job to do here, but not everything has to be high stakes. We do have to learn and figure out. And so I'm really excited about the work. And I would echo what Commissioner Coy said around the attention to human capital. And I'm sure I have other thoughts, but I have to move us along. So enjoy the conference. I'm sorry I can't be there with you. And thank you and your team for presenting today.
Thank you, commissioners.
All righty, I'd like to turn it over to Chief Tina Hike Hubbard, who will introduce our partner spotlight for today.
Good afternoon, late evening, commissioners. Last month's presentation, you heard from our Achievement and Accountability team about the Student Police Survey. And I want to just introduce YAR, Youth as Resources. They are an extremely important partner in the implementation of that survey. And they were not able to join us for the last meeting. They needed more advance notice to prepare. And so we offered them the chance to come back today and share their thoughts about the partnership with us and the student school police survey, excuse me. And so I'm going to turn off my camera and I'm going to turn it over to them for the next 15 minutes to sort of share their thoughts, and maybe they can all leave a little bit of time into their presentation for if the commissioners have questions. So I'll turn it over to the team and they can introduce themselves. Thank you very much.
Hello. I just want to share my screen really quick. Do you want to start?
Yeah. So, hello everyone. I'm Yov Millette. I am a senior at Western, and I'm the board chair, task force coaching trainer, and the School Police Accountability Roundtable host at Youth as Resources.
Sorry. Hi, I am Brazen. I am the associate director for YAR. Did it work?
I see your presentation. It's up. Yep.
Okay, cool. We're just a little lagging a little behind. Sorry.
You want us to introduce ourselves?
Excellent. There we go.
Look at that. But all right, so this is going to be our presentation to you all on the School Police Report Card. So here's just a brief introduction of who we are. So Youth as Resources is a youth-led organization. We focus on grant making, leadership development, community organizing, and institutional change. We empower ourselves and our peers to address the root causes of our pressing issues through training, organizing, collaboration, funding, and so much more. So we have a board made up of 22 members who are all under or in between the ages of 14 and 24. They govern the organization and they manage the 2 grant cycles that we have per year. They do fund development, program priorities, and outcome evaluation. Each year we adopt on an issue agenda based on our lived experiences and those of our peers. So for the fiscal year 2025, which is July 2024 to June 2025, our focus areas include school police accountability, school climate, youth homelessness, and mental health / disability awareness and inclusion.
Sorry, my arrow.
So this is just an overview of SPAR and our school police accountability work. So our school police accountability strategies are led by the School Police Accountability Roundtable, aka SPAR, a youth-led roundtable facilitated by YAR with support from our peers, other youth-led groups, adult, y'all always mess up with this word, activists, mental health advocates, and education groups. Our goal is to disrupt the school to prison pipeline by reducing police involvement in schools and ensuring school police foster positive relationships with students and families. SPAR is essential because it is a space where we can create our own strategies and make decisions with adults providing additional resources and information. We live experiences that some adults cannot truly understand. So here's our key efforts. So we're engaging over 1,000 peers in creating a school police report card and making recommendations for improved practices. We are also advocating for the annual administration of the school police survey and report card or / report card, and 5 hours of mandated youth-led training for school officers. We educate our peers about their rights regarding school police. We work with allies on policies related to use of force, police involvement in discipline, and diversion strategies. We develop a student-friendly, or we have developed a student-friendly police complaint form adopted by the school system and the Civilian Review Board. And lastly, we defend efforts to arm school police and testify against legislation that would double the school police officer budget statewide. Now, before we get into anything else, we want to give our thanks out to the Baltimore City school system. We've been working with you all since 2015. We want to also thank y'all for including us in the making recommendations around school police policies, general orders, and including us in our recommendations. Also, we would like to thank you all for the availability of Baltimore City Public Schools leadership to meet with us, listen to us, and also connect with us. So, other decision makers. And this is a quick shout out to Chief Hyde Hubbard, Chief Jones, Major Coleman, and of course, Chief Ham and thank you all again for allowing us to learn, make mistakes, and grow. When we started this work, over 1,000 students were arrested in Baltimore City schools, but now it's less than 50. I'm gonna pass it over to Grayson.
Hello, I'm Grayson again. So I'm going to go over some concerns that we have, mainly from the past couple of years. So for this last school year, there was low and even no engagement from some schools for our school police report card, or as you all say, survey. Particularly from those that have historically low scores. One of those being Augusta Fells. They've had low scores for the past few years. This year they have like maybe 5 or 3 students that completed the survey. And while those scores seem to be improving, reflecting strong relationships between students and school police, they remain lower than we would like, especially in areas such as relationships, engagement, in school activities, and listening. Mm-hmm. We also came to the conclusion that because there was such low involvement or such low engagement from students this year, that the data we couldn't really use because the numbers were just so low. We were also not involved in the planning or outreach process for overall communication. Just overall communication has broken down this past year for some reason. It's important to us that students are informed and actively engaged, and we like to be involved in that process because we can help. As an organization, we have a firm policy of not commenting on individual school police officers. However, we do want to acknowledge that we've noticed an increase in complaints from students and peers regarding disrespect, aggressiveness, and use of force in schools, just from word of mouth from our community work that we do. So some recommendations to move forward. We would like to improve communication again, so to get us back to that good point where we can assist in planning, promoting, and gathering input from our peers and thoughtfully analyzing the results. We acknowledge that you all have recommendations for increasing participation, and we have some suggestions as well. Such as advertising the report card in Google Classrooms, offering opportunities for students to complete the survey in class with participation points as incentives or some other ways to incentivize them, and setting clear expectations for participation with the principals of the schools. And of course, we want to collaborate and help and think together on how we can solve the low involvement problem. We also recommend retraining and training school police officers, principals, and administrators based on the school police policy, which states that the school and district administrators and teachers, not school police, should be responsible for addressing student discipline issues that are not criminal or deemed an imminent threat of serious harm that cannot be otherwise abated. The training goals would include enhancing everyone's understanding of the difference between school discipline issues and law enforcement related incidents. Again, just through word of mouth, we've heard a lot of students and some teachers say that principals or other administrators call the police in to handle school discipline issues instead of school criminal issues. Additionally, we'd like to implement the 5 hours of youth-led training for school police officers. This is also a part of the policy, but has never been fully put into practice. They've never met that full 5 hours. This is important to us because it offers school police officers a chance to better understand our lives and how we view things. It also fosters student engagement and helps break down barriers. Despite our negative experiences with training school police officers in the past, we remain committed to this because these experiences confirm just how necessary this training is. Furthermore, as disability and rights advocates, we know that many school police officers could benefit from the training we offer in dealing with students who may have disabilities unseen or seen. Next, I want to give you all just an update on our work for school safety. We do have a pilot project currently in place. That project is to institutionalize support for student-led safety strategies, and it's off to a great start at Mervo. Our long-term mission is to institutionalize support for student-led safety strategies, focusing particularly on mental health, restorative practices, peer-to-peer support, wellness, and relationships. We're piloting the project over 2 years and gathering data to demonstrate its potential to improve school climate, increase attendance, decrease suspensions, improve relationships in schools, and strengthen student leadership and decision-making. All things that we stand for. Our year one strategy is threefold. So our first goal is to form a committee of students and adults in the school to monitor the strategy, including finalizing goals and data points, providing and analyzing data and giving ongoing feedback. The adult committee members include a community school staff person, a school police officer, a mental health provider, and a principal designee. And we want to thank Officer Ivy at Mervo for participating in our interest session for students and agreeing to serve on the committee. Our second one is to create and administer a survey to gauge perceptions of safety, needs, and resources, and strategies to address those needs. That'll be given out to the entire school student population. Our last one is to stipend and train 8 Mervo students to lead and run climate clubs. Climate club members will review the information from the survey and create and carry out strategies to address these needs. We did this last school year and it worked really well. We have hired the grade 8 as of like last week, and we'll onboard and train the groups starting next week. Those students will also serve on the committee with the adult members. And of course, a huge thank you to the Eagle Foundation for giving us partial funding to do this startup. We believe it's a great investment. Finally, I just want to thank you all. We'll contact Commissioner Muhammad later. I see he's not here today. That's all right. We love meeting with him when we did it last year or earlier this year. So thank you all for having us, and we will open the floor for questions if we can.
Thank you so much for this wonderful report. You all have been busy, and I love that the team has been collaborative, and I like your recommendations for increasing the survey participation. good. Such a wonderful presentation. Wanted to open it up to Commissioner Coy. Did you have any questions for Yar?
Yeah, no, well, thank you for the hard work, the longstanding work, and the commitment to working even when, as you point out, there are challenges that you have and anticipate experiencing. Just thank you for that. As it relates to school police, obviously you all, as I recall from some of the previous presentations, met with some of the selection process when the new chief of school, city schools police was selected. Have you had a chance since he started in his role to meet with Chief Shorter?
We're in the process of setting a date for that.
We have a date.
Oh, we have a date?
Mhm.
Okay, yeah, we've been working on that. So we're excited to finally sit down with him. He did come to one of our SPAR meetings briefly. So we got to meet him there, but we want to like a formal introduction meeting with him. So we'll be doing that soon.
Yeah, no, I think that that is obviously a great opportunity, and especially at the beginning of his time here to have these recommendations, and certainly would recommend Dr. Judkins or Jonathan for us to share, this recording when it's available with him as a chance to listen to the presentation then, or to hear it directly from you all, however you'd like to spend that time, obviously. But just, thank you for the longstanding and ongoing work that you all are doing in this, and for being here today presenting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Excellent work. Thank you for your leadership. I'm going to move us along to public comment. I have checked with the office staff. It does not appear that we have anyone here for public comment today. As a reminder, I will offer up that members of the public who would like to provide public comment to this committee can do so by signing up beginning 9 a.m. the Thursday before the meeting until 5 p.m. the Monday before the meeting date. You can contact the board office via phone, email, or in person to sign up for a 3-minute spot on agenda topic or on issues related to the agenda topics. Before we close out today, I do want to acknowledge, before we go through that portion of the meeting, I do want to acknowledge as we wrap up that it is National Bullying Prevention Month. And this is just a time for us to remind ourselves of the power that each of us hold to make our schools a place where everyone wants to be, where students feel safe, respected, and valued. And as our chair normally does, give a quote of the day, I'll say, Michelle Obama said, "Courage can be contagious and hope can take on a life of its own." So when we choose to stand up against bullying, we inspire others to do the same. So let's carry that courage forward together, and we can create a culture of kindness and inclusion for all of our students. With that being said, I am going to move to close this session. May I now have a motion to close the meeting as permitted by the Open Meetings Act to fulfill the board's administrative function in accordance with the annotated Code of Maryland?
So moved, Commissioner Coy.
Am I allowed to second it? No.
Yeah,
It's
it's
only
just the
the
two of us.
Yes. So, all right. Before we vote to close the meeting, do we have any members of the public who would like to object the closing of the meeting? Seeing none, all in favor, Commissioner Coy?
Yes.
I am in favor. And with that, we close the Safety and Wholeness Committee meeting. Thank you.